The African Union and ECOWAS is racing against time to save the situation in Niger. But Niger is not an isolated case. The Sahel, or the whole Sahel region, is in trouble. Let's talk about this coup belt and what can be done. We are now being joined by Dr. Oluwole Ojewale, security expert and regional coordinator for Central Africa at the Institute for Security Studies in Dakar, Senegal. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us at this hour and welcome to the program. This is WION The World is One. We just want to understand the situation. What do you make of what happened in Niger this week?
Thank you so much for having me. I think what I make of it is the fact that there has never been a concerted effort to consolidate democracy in that country in particular. And some of the countries that you mentioned, whether it is Mali, Burkina Faso, there has never been an elite consensus to consolidate democracy in those countries. And then you continue to see this repetitive, ugly experience of military incursion into politics in those places. In the last decade, Mali, Niger, there have been coup attempts several times, even up to 2021 in Niger Republic, and it justifies the reason that I just advanced now.
Why is this coup d'etat becoming so common in the Sahel region? What is fanning it?
I think on one side, the juntas claiming two reasons. One is the fact that they feel that the security situation is fast deteriorating in those places under civilian administration and they need to step in. And the second thing is the populism that they are finding in some of those countries, which is anti-French sentiment, to say they feel France has been in charge of the political development, democratization in those countries, then placing their people that they can control remotely in power. And like I said, that is populism that they are trying to fund within the polity. But the case of Niger in the recent time, I think the reasons that the military, the juntas have actually advanced, it's a lie, it is falsehood for two principal reasons. Afrobarometer data has shown consistently that presidential approval among Nigerians has been on the rise in the recent time, far above 50%, and satisfaction with democracy in the country is also on the high curve. So I think there are more remote reasons why coup is taking place in some of these countries. And the case of Niger is the fact that this particular general Tiani is based on what is available in the public domain. There has been a division in the army. There is a part of the army that is loyal to President Bazoum. And then this particular general is actually about to be fired. And then I think he quickly take advantage of that to stage a coup. That is what justifies, that we can advance as the reason for this recent coup in Niger.
Dr. ECOWAS did hold a meeting, a crisis meeting, in the capital of Nigeria, that is Abuja, and they finalized to give sanctions to Niger. They've done this to Chad, they've done this to Mali. What will change if they give sanctions to Niger? And remember, the coup leader has said that he does not want any foreign intervention, including that from ECOWAS.
Well, we've seen the sanction, how it worked in Mali, and then we've also seen in other places like Burkina Faso. I think ECOWAS is exploring every possibility that they have at their disposal to send a message across that the region is not going to allow any process that subverts democratic order in the country. I've read the sanction. I think they are well placed and they are in order. Freezing of certain accounts and closing of airspace with Niger Republic and some other things that are on the menu. But the big thing here is the fact that who are going to be, what will be the fallout, the consequence of the sanction? Who are going to be directly impacted? Is it the ordinary person on the street who possibly is not going to enjoy dividends of democracy under the new military leadership in the country, who is going to be abused as far as human rights is concerned? And then when you consider some of these things, the clamping down of civil liberties in the country, and then the shutting down of economic connection, global connectivity in terms of trade, and then foreign foreign direct investment to the country, then the people are going to be hard bites as far as these sanctions are concerned. But I think they are in order to the extent to which they target the people that are truly involved in the military coup.
Doctor, apart from the sanctions, there are those who argue, there are some critics who argue that the African Union is a toothless organization. It has not been able to do anything. With that in mind, who is that one leader, African leader for that matter, who can, be a mediator in all these conflicts, be it in the West, be it in the Central, be it in the South, be it in the North?
Unfortunately, it's very, very hard to be able to pick such individual who has such democratic credential to be able to do that now. But we can narrow down to one or two. I think based on the present situation, the former president of Nigeria, General Muhammadu Buhari, is rightly placed because of his cultural affinity with the country and the immense support that he has provided to the country in the course of his 8 years of administration in Nigeria. I think he might be able to do some work in that regard. Then we can also talk about former president of Liberia, Johnson Sirleaf. These are leaders who have some locus as far as the West African sub-region is concerned. But if you look far left, right, north, and south, there are a few leaders that might be able to do that in terms of diplomatic engagement now. And then the sole responsibility outside of the AU. I know the African Union has given 15 days ultimatum for the restoration of democratic order in the country, and the ECOWAS has given five days. So I think the sole responsibility here lies with the ECOWAS leadership to be able to achieve this objective of democratic restoration in the country, perhaps in the immediate time or short term. And the reason why I'm saying that is this. ECOWAS has also put on the table that if the juntas don't budge in the next 5 days, and then with all the diplomatic overture, that they might also consider the use of force. The implication of that is that what is at stake in Niger that will warrant the use of force now, particularly when we look at the broader instability in the entire Sahel. So I think much more than that, we need more of diplomatic engagement and persuasion to see how we can achieve, how the ECOWAS leaders actually can achieve the democratic restoration in Niger in the quickest time possible.
Doctor, there's a new development that occurred yesterday. We saw the Chadian president, who himself is a general and also a coup leader, going to Niger to mediate between the military there and the president. Don't you think that is somewhat funny?
Well, it sounds a bit curious, but the fact is that you have to use both the bad and the good strategies now to be able to achieve whatever you want to achieve. And don't forget that it was strategically invited into the meeting in Abuja for obvious reasons. Perhaps that is part of the reasons why he was invited into Abuja. And don't also forget that Chad itself is also in the process of democratic transition that has that looks like never-ending process in the recent time. So I think based on all this development, I would say Niger, which has now closed the gap within the Sahel region from Mali, Burkina Faso. Niger used to be the only democratic wall that separates that West African countries from Central African country of Chad that is also ruled by military administration. Now Niger has closed that gap within the shortest time possible as far as we are concerned now. And we can't really tell what they are talking to each other. I only hope that his advance, his overture in Niger is to support the position of ECOWAS, and he's not preaching a different gospel when he has come to Niger.
Doctor, let's talk about the influence that the West keeps on talking about. They say that the inclusion of Russia or Wagner Group in places like West Africa or Central African Republic is fueling this coups. Do you agree with that statement? And what can be done when it comes to influence of foreign governments or foreign influencers from outside in Africa?
Well, there's an adage that he who pays the pipers dictate the tune. The interests of the foreign Western establishment or foreign establishment cannot be overemphasized or underemphasized in this regard for obvious reasons. The first thing is the fact that, don't forget that the United States of America and France actually have drone base in the Niger Republic. They have a military base there. In fact, when the G5 Sahel security meltdown happened, they moved their military infrastructure and base to Niger Republic. So these countries have made significant investment in the country. And if there's a democratic recession in the country, we will not expect them to close their mouth and then to fold their hands and not talk or do something about it. And then with respect to Russia's influence on the continent, particularly in the Sahel, I think it's a known fact. And what we have seen on the streets is that the moment these putschists come into power, the next thing we see is people raising the flag of Russia and all those things. But what is curious and particularly funny about this thing is how the people can feel disengaging with France and running to the open arms of Russia is going to be a respite for them. I think, like a popular saying, it is like falling from fry pan to fire, because everywhere Russia goes in Africa, everywhere the Russian machinery goes in Africa, particularly with Wagner, what they are also doing, and it's subverting democracy in those places, and then planting authoritarian regimes, supporting authoritarian regime, whether it is in Central African Republic or whether it is in Mali. This is, and I think Africa is fast becoming the frontier for clash of ideas, the clash of ideas between democracy and autocracy. And then it's a war of ideas that is being fought on the continent now. And then the second thing is the fact that it's also fast becoming a ground for proxy war between the Western establishment that represent the liberal democracy and what Russia stands for, which is authoritarian regime. So I think the bulk of the work lies with African leaders now to actually take a position and rescue their countries from these foreign interventions that is turning the countries to battleground for clash of ideas and also even for clash of military power.
Doctor, finally, we had the Kenyan President, William Ruto, say that coups are a setback for Africa. So what can save the Sahel or this coup region? What can be the saving grace for that region going forward?
It's a very big question that you're asking, and I think the fact that the number one thing is that this last coup in Niger, ECOWAS must make a decisive point to discourage it through the use of diplomacy, and then possibly, if it comes to the other option, which is not palatable, but I think ECOWAS want to explore every option. And the second thing is that African leader, the African Union, need to actually put their feet on the ground and take a stand if they actually want to pursue the liberal democracy on the continent. But I think the big challenge in this regard is the fact that we have leaders in power who meet at the level of AU as trade unionists. Because they are not really talking the truth to one another. Some of the leaders who are actually standing for democracy now, who claim to be Democrats now, they are also authoritarian Democrats in their country. They do not allow opposition parties. They are subverting human rights, running repressive regime in some of those countries, even though they claim to be Democrats. So when you have this logjam of issues put together in a single bucket, then you have a serious crisis at hand. So I think the way to go is that the people must own democracy. The people must own democracy on the continent until they are able to hold their leaders to account. We continue to have this subversive process of military incursion into politics. That I think is the way to go. And then we also need how much of support that we can get from international partners who stand for liberal democracy in terms of supporting good governance. It's not enough for them to be sending aid money to some of these countries. They also have to tie it to democratic commitment on the part of the leaders in some of those countries and support the people to hold their government to account in some of these places. Otherwise, it is not yet Uhuru.
All right, I've been talking to Dr. Oluwole Ojewale, security expert and regional coordinator for Central Africa at the Institute for Security Studies in Dakar, Senegal. Doctor, thank you very much for all your insights and for talking to WION The World today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be part of the program.